Good morning. Today is Tuesday, the 13th day of Shevat. So we sent out the question, the title of today's class, what is greater, the Torah study or prayer? Well, the answer really is not conclusive because there's elements in both. However, here, there's elements in both that each one has something which is above the other. Here in this chapter, the Alter Rebbe explains the special union with Hashem that happens by Torah study, which surpasses prayer. And this goes in continuation to what we learned yesterday regarding the difference between the way we are united with Hashem by doing mitzvahs and the way we are by studying His Torah. The mitzvahs are compared to the organs of Hashem, just like the organs of the body is one with the body, one with the soul, meaning that whenever the person, the soul, wants to carry out a mission, the organ, the hand, whatever it is, carries out that mission automatically. It is nullified. Patriarchs were also nullified to Hashem in that way. They became a wagon to Hashem. So when a Jew does a mitzvah, he also becomes, at the moment when he does the mitzvah, he becomes nullified to Hashem. However, we explained by the end of the day, the mitzvah itself is done through physical objects, but this is not the ultimate will of Hashem, not the object. The mitzvah that is done through the object is the will of Hashem. But it is different, by contrast, when it comes to the Torah study. When you study the Torah itself is the wisdom of Hashem, the wisdom of God Himself. And just like we cannot differentiate between God and His wisdom, as explained when the Maimonides says that Hashem is not like, His thoughts is not like our thoughts. God and His wisdom is one. He knows something because He is something and He is everything. So here the wisdom, when we study the wisdom of Hashem, that God wants this to be the law, and we study it, we connect to the ultimate wisdom of Hashem. And we explained yesterday that even the angels and even the higher levels, the higher worlds, they do not have that type of unity. They do not have that appreciation, the connection to the very essence of Hashem. Because if they would, they wouldn't exist. The only reason why we can study the Torah and still exist is because we have it, but we don't know what we have. We don't sense what we have. Just like when the Jewish people at the Matan Torah, when God gave the Torah, it says the first two commandments the Jews heard directly from Hashem, but they couldn't hold it, and they expired. Their souls departed, and Hashem had to revive them again, because then they appreciate this godly revelation, and that is something that they could not hold. So today, when we study Torah, says the Alter Rebbe, we connect to Hashem in a way that no mitzvah can do. And here today, in today's Shir, the Alter Rebbe explains that this is also above and beyond anything we can accomplish through prayers. So let's look inside. Says the Alter Rebbe, ובזה יובן למה גודל מאוד מעלס העסק בתורה יסוד מכל המצוות. There's discussion of the exalted unity with God attained through Torah study, which is even greater than that accomplished by performing the mitzvahs. This explains why Torah study is so much loftier than all other commandments. Va'afilu mitfila, including even prayer. Shu yichud olam elyonim. which affects unity within the supernal worlds. The whole thing explained, the prayer affects a unity in the higher worlds, the union. Just like a union by humans brings creation, creates something else, and brings children. In the supernal world, there is also the concept of the union of the higher realm with the vessels, which is not now the time to explain. However, the point is that tefillah, prayer, creates such unions, and yet the Torah study is even much greater than the tefillah, the prayer. However, the Alter Rebbe points here also a question may be asked: if Torah study is greater than prayer, then how come we are commanded to stop Torah study when time comes to pray? And it says that only a person who is Torah is his entire occupation. Like the sages of old, they would study Torah all day. Some sages would pray only once in 30 days. However, anybody else, one who is not, his Torah is not his entire occupation, he is required to stop the Torah study and go and pray. So the Alter Rebbe explains this is because that person stops anyway, meaning he's not doing the Torah all day and all night. He stops to do according to Torah. He is permitted to go to work, to go to eat, to go to drink, to do anything what he needs. So therefore, if he stops his Torah study anyway, then the obligation falls on him to pray. But the fact that he has to stop Torah study in order to pray does not indicate that the prayer is in a higher level. On the contrary, it says in that sense, the union that we have with Hashem through Torah study surpasses even the union that we have through the prayer. That's what the Alter Rebbe continues, says, V'ho de mishe'ein taraso yumnosei tzarich lehafsik. Although the law requires of anyone whose Torah study is not his entire occupation, that he interrupts his study for prayer, which would seem to indicate that the prayer surpasses Torah study. Says the Alter Rebbe, no, that's not an indication. This is so only because he would, in any case, pause and interrupt his Torah study. That's why he has to pray. But the point is that the Torah study is in a higher level. He says, from this explanation of the lofty stature of Torah study, the wise man will be able to draw upon himself a sense of great awe as he engages in the study of the Torah. When he considers how his soul and its garments of thoughts and speech that are found in his brain and mouth are truly fused in perfect unity with the divine will and the infinite light of Ein Sof, that is manifest in them, meaning the soul and its garment when he studies Torah. Hashem, the divine light, is manifest in the person. And this is something, such a great light, that the higher worlds cannot get, because they will be nullified. This infinite light manifest in one's Torah study is of such lofty level that all the upper and lower worlds are truly as naught in comparison with it, and are in fact as absolutely nothing at all. So much so that they can only bear to have a minute glow of it clothed in them without their reverting to nothingness altogether. The whole world cannot get it. It is only encompassing the world in an encompassing way to give them their main sustenance. There's only a light, a very small light that can go in there to give them their life, what they can contain, so that they do not become nullified completely. And yet, when we study the Torah, we have that great Ein Sof light, the Sovev light, is something that we gain and we unite through the Torah study. Zeu shekasu vayetzaveinu Hashem es kol hachokim me'eleh, la'yira es Hashem v'gomer. This is the meaning of the verse, and God commanded us to fulfill all these statutes in order to fear God. And here says the Alter Rebbe, what does that mean? Hashem gave us the statutes to fear God. Isn't it the other way around? It would make sense to say first that a person has fear of Hashem because he has fear of Hashem. That's why he studies the Torah. That's why he does the mitzvahs. So the Alter Rebbe comes here to explain that there are two types of fear. There is the lower level of fear. When a person fears God, he fears the sins, he fears to be disconnected from Hashem. And because of that, he goes and does the Torah mitzvahs. But when you do the Torah and you study the Torah and you connect with the light of the Torah and you meditate about this leads you to a higher level of fear, the fear that you become one with Hashem, the fear that of the greatest awe of Hashem that comes after. It's called Yira, Ila'ah, a higher level of fear. That's what the Alter Rebbe continues. Regarding this great level, this great fear, our sages said, if there is no wisdom, there is no fear. So he says, in this concept, wisdom represents Torah study, and fear, the higher level of the awe of God, which can be reached only by way of Torah. He says, by contrast, the statement, if there is no fear, there is no wisdom, it refers to the lower level of fear. This comes from the Pirkei Avos. In the Pirkei Avos, it says both things, which seems to be contradicting. It says, if there is no fear, there is no wisdom. Then it says, if no wisdom, there is no fear. And that's what the Alter Rebbe explains, that there's two types of fear. There's the fear that leads to wisdom, and then the wisdom leads you to a higher level of fear. So in relation to this level of fear, the Torah is called a gateway to the dwelling. This comes from the Gemara that talks about a gateway to the dwelling. The Gemara says sometimes you make a gate, but when you open the gate, there's nothing there. This is when a person has Torah, but it has no fear. If you have Torah but doesn't lead you anywhere, it's a gate to nowhere. But the Torah can become a gateway to the dwelling, meaning a gateway to Hashem's dwelling. As explained, Commission's Bible Mokimachas explains elsewhere. Hello, however, the love kol do, not every mind, however, can sustain such a fear. Yiro kazu, such a great fear. Ach gaman de loisavil moichei klal yirazu. Yet, even he whose mind cannot bear such a fear, Loi mino veloi miktsasa, not even a minute part of it, mipnei pchisus erech nafshe b'sheroshe mekoira, because the root of the source and source of his soul derives from an inferior level. The madreges tachtoines the esespheres the asiya, the lower gradations of the 10 sephires of the world of asiya, which is the lower world. Nevertheless, ein yirozu ma'akeves bo lemaise k'mo she'nizbar lekamon. Even he should not be deterred from the actual performance of the Torah and the mitzvahs for want of this fear, as will be explained further. That even though a person cannot reach that level, doesn't mean that he doesn't have this great revelation. But the revelation is there, even though if you don't feel it. You see, the fear that a person has reminds me of the story by the Rebbe once during a Farbrengen. The Rebbe was saying a lot of l'chaim, and then I think that story is told also by the other Rebbes. Moved the hand over the forehead, and you could not see any effect of the mashka, of the alcohol. And how does it work? It is through the contemplation. It says that when a person is intoxicated, what can take away the intoxication is fear. When something really scares your life, then all of a sudden you sober up pretty quickly. So when they had this, the yira, when the tzaddik thinks about Hashem and about the greatness of Hashem, it creates such a deep fear in the person that a person changes it completely. There's a similar story, another story related also. It says, I think it was Reb Zusha Vanipoli, that he was once suffering from a terrible, that he couldn't have the bowel movement. And whatever medication they gave him, whatever herbs, they didn't help. And at one point he went outside and he looked at the stars. He started contemplating of the greatness of Hashem. And all of a sudden, the story goes, he got such a fear of Hashem that it released his entire bowels, and there was even with blood coming out. So the idea that what the fear of Hashem comes through the understanding of the Torah, and through the Torah you can reach the deeper level of the fear of Hashem. And what is the lesson to us? The lesson to us in a very positive way, of course, is the fact that when we sit down and we study Torah, and we understand, we appreciate what we accomplish, whether we can reach that level of fear or not. But the fact is that this is a study of the Torah. One unites with Hashem, is sitting and you're studying God's wisdom, and you're becoming one with Hashem. And that brings you a whole different effect on you when you study the Torah, knowing this. So this is the end of today's shiur. Thank you so much for joining. And we'll, B'ezrat Hashem, continue tomorrow. And also on Thursday night, we'll give a class that will explain the other side between Torah and prayer, which one in Chassidus is brought on both sides. which one is greater. That will be our class for Thursday night. Tonight, we, of course, we also have the Torah study. And that will be tonight, 8 p.m. Bezrat Hashem. All the best and have a wonderful, wonderful day. Any questions? We can take another questions.